You go
Want me to
first,
go?
Simon. Yeah.
All right. Cool. What is your biggest regret in life, AV?
Oh man, this is why on the spot these sorts of questions are really hard. What's my biggest regret in life?
If you have any.
I think I don't have many regrets per se because I think I've been lucky, or I don't know if it's luck or whether it's just had good intuitive decisions, but I think I didn't fall into the trap of doing things I didn't want to do at a young age. I just kind of chose my path quite quickly. Like, for example, if I was thinking about my career, the whole pursuing law, I changed that before it was too late to change it, which I think was key. And I think if, for example, if I pursued that a little bit further than where I did go to, then it would have been harder to kind of come back on it, and the sense of regret would have been deeper later on. So from that perspective, I don't feel like I have anything. The only one I always think of is like, I wish I started something like R&T earlier. That's probably like something like, I don't know, hindsight, but when I look back at my time when I was working as a personal trainer, I used to spend a lot of pretty much all my spare time thinking about how I can create a better business model, a better way of doing things, and putting my own spin on it. And I think that was something I wish I did earlier, because if I look back, and this is funny, a couple of weeks ago, I was looking back at my old notes folder on my iPhone, and you can look back, I think I have up to like 2014. I just thought, let me just look back at what I was taking notes on back then. And it was just things like 10 ideas for a new business, these sorts of things, or like 10 ways to spread a message more. And it was always like, I was always thinking about these things when I was there. And, we talk about what we like binge on in terms of education in our spare time. Once I'd learned like a lot of the foundations around health and fitness, I spent all my time just like binging on like entrepreneurship and business and different ways to build products and services. But I never acted on it. And I wish the thing is, I had those flirtations with the dessert lounge and like some t-shirt things I used to do on the side, like to sell these t-shirts, but it was never anything that I really wanted to dive into. Was it?
It wasn't deep. It wasn't deep work.
It wasn't anything that was meaningful to me. And I wish that's the only thing I look back and think, oh, if I could have started this earlier. But I think at the same time, all my learnings working as a personal trainer in the setting I was in became very, very valuable. So from that perspective, it's less of a regret. It's more like, what would have happened if it was earlier? But then the question is like, what would I have not gained? And what would I have not learned if I had done it earlier? And I think I'm learning more and more that, everything happens at the right time. Everything happens in the right place and order. And trying to think back on these sorts of things doesn't make any sense, because you wouldn't have the thinking and the learnings and the development that you would have had without those experiences. So that's the only thing that I sometimes find myself thinking about. And I was just thinking about it the other week when I was just reading back these notes folders. But other than that, I feel like it's all sort of played out in a good way. Even like if I think of it in a relationship point of view, like relationships I've had that have failed, I think, oh, why didn't I get out of that earlier? But again, like so often, even in the day-to-day now, the lessons of what I learned, why I didn't get out of there earlier, have allowed me to be better now and make better decisions in relationships now. So yeah, the long-winded answer is probably I don't have any. They just have just a lot of different learning experiences that I've accumulated to bring me to where I am now.
Yeah, solid. Just on top, just a real quick one. I know, Ed, you'll go next, but when you made that decision that you were studying law and then you made the transition to exercise at that young age, like what gave you the courage to actually do that? Because we know that is not an easy thing to do in the culture, and also at that time. That's like, what the hell? That's blasphemy to go away from that path, especially if you were smart enough to do law,
The cultural, like, the joke is always made, like, you either doing medicine, finance or law. And back then, I didn't know any Indians or Asians doing pretty much anything different. nowadays you see a few more. I see a few more Asians getting into different spaces, and especially in health and fitness, see a few more, which is great. Back then, I didn't know anyone, and it was almost like unheard of what this was. Like, my parents used to think this was just doing star jumps in the field, being a PE teacher doing star jumps.
It is.
Yeah. And the worry. I was talking about a lot, the whole question of like how you're going to pay the bills and all these sorts of things, but I don't know. There was just something weird, visceral feeling I had that there was something I could do in this field. And I remember back then, like I remember reading T Nation a lot. That was my go-to website, T Nation and Men's Health. That was the phase I was in when I was like 16, 17. I was constantly just on those websites learning about health and fitness. And I remember there was this law exam that we had to take to apply to the top law universities. I can't remember what it's called. It's called like LSAT, LMAT or something like that. And I hated studying for it. And I just didn't have any passion at all. And I realized when I was doing like work experience there, I was lucky enough to do work experience in Germany because I was studying German and we had a work exchange thing. And I was lucky enough to do it in Mumbai because we had family friends, really close family friends who were lawyers in Mumbai. And they said, "Oh, why don't you come work at a firm?" What I didn't realize at the time was the only reason it was fun is because it was abroad and it was a new experience. It was like being on holiday. So I thought, this is great, right? It's great being in the Mumbai courts of law because this is different. It's a different culture. It's really fun and exciting. What I only reflected on more recently is like when I was spending time in the actual firms, I was just bored out of my mind. Like the actual work itself was just not interesting. And but then there was still a lot of peers around me who were still doing that, even though they didn't like it. And I don't know what it was. I just had this weird feeling. And I got asked to write a chapter in a book like a couple of years ago called "Advice to Your Younger Self." And one of the things I wrote was because I was thinking about this, like, why did I choose that path? And I think it's the deeper reason here. I think it's because I lost my first cousin when I was 15, and he was only 19 years old, and he never got a chance to live his life because he lost his life at 19. But he was very much happy-go-lucky, do what you love. It was a very positive, optimistic person. He never let what was happening to him, which was, he was suffering from a brain tumor from the age of 3, affect him. He was always very optimistic. He was someone who had that ordeal of chemotherapy and all these things for 16 years, was not expected to live that long. And when he passed away, I was 15 years old, or just about to turn 15 years old. And I think it just reframed how I thought about life at a young age without subconsciously realizing that it can be very short. And if I didn't make this choice, I would live to regret it. And I think that was what the deeper reason for why I made that choice subconsciously, because it was never like I was not weighing up the pros and cons. It was very much like, I remember it being almost like an overnight decision of like, yeah, I think I just need to do this. Like, this is not for me. And yeah, one of my friends prompted me to say, like, why don't you look at a career in health and fitness? But I still had to make that decision. And no one in my school did. I went to it was a very driven school, very ambitious school that everyone was, my grades were considered like below average. Everyone was very academically smart, and they all went to very strong universities. It was one of the top UK schools that sent their kids, that sent their pupils to Oxford and Cambridge. So it's very much like that kind of environment. And when I told the head of year that I wanted to do sports science, he made that kind of weird joke of like, "Oh, so what's better, dark or milk chocolate?" That was the kind of jokes he made back at it. But
does he actually know the answer though?
Yeah. At the time, I was just like, dark. And
at the time, it'd have been fish and a rice cake.
Yeah. I say it'd be dark if you take fish oil straight after.
Yeah.
But I just felt like, it was just the right thing to do. So I don't even know what the question was you asked now. I think it was.
I was just, how did you get the courage to make that decision?
I think it was just
like an overnight thing.
It was almost like, it was just a very visceral experience. And I think, looking back, I think I was definitely affected by losing my cousin, him being such a young person when he lost his life. And I think that affected some of my decision making at that time. And it still does. Like, I always think, like, we shouldn't be doing what we don't do. And that's why I speak so passionately about doing what you actually enjoy. And I'm not living in some delusion that you follow your passion, follow your dreams,
Yeah.
not that sort of motivational crap,
No.
but you should pursue what you want to do. And that's why I always try and push people towards that and try and see the good in them, because there is always potential to follow that path if you really want to pursue it.
I guess to build on that, then, if you kind of broke the mold from the usual career paths of, say, people from your school, if you then fast forward, do you think you then were one of the top performers at a very big personal training company? You left that to then start your own thing, which again, I could say, you could argue is definitely breaking the mold. You then tried to change the direction of transformation, or what it's perceived to be, which again, breaking a big mold in the fitness industry. Obviously, when it comes to being different, standing out, just putting yourself out there requires a lot of guts, but it's also going to come with it a lot of criticism, people going against that, or, potentially laughing at it, whatever it may be, especially before things really gather momentum. How do you think you've dealt with that over time? And how do you think that's improved?
It's a really good question. I think I've definitely had multiple periods of life when I've had like a lot of criticism. Like, for example, I won't talk about the career stuff, because I think I've spoken about that a lot around, this is what do your aunts think, and all these things. What do the community think? Or what's he doing? Like, why is he doing fitness? Because I think I've talked about that a lot, but I'd say I've had a lot more in the last. And then after that, I didn't really get anything. I would say no real sort of external criticism. And then in the last few years, I've had a lot. Obviously, I know I've got my army of haters, and that's all cool. Like, for me, like, whenever I tell people about it, they're like, you should take it as a compliment. It's a good thing. And the way I've dealt with it is, I think, in all honesty, like, a lot of the time I do think about it like that. Like, for example, the word transformation coach. I remember when I first introduced it here, I told everyone to take body out of the signs and put just transformation coach. Now I see it everywhere. Everyone's a transformation coach. But the reality is, most people aren't transformation coaches, because what's been difficult to create and instill in coaches is the idea that transformation is holistic, and that it's mind and body. And this really catches people out, because I spoke quite openly last year around October, November, around how, like, a transformation coach should be able to help you through no matter what happens in life. And I think that's where, if you just put transformation coach as your label, but you can't do that, you're barking up the wrong tree, and you're not serving your people in the right way. Because there's a difference between just focusing on body transformation and online personal training than actually true transformation, which involves dealing with all the different aspects of life. And I've tried to push the company towards that, because I think for me, it's always been more than the physical. And I know for you guys, it has been as well. And I think people should be exposed to that. I'm going to use the word visceral again, that visceral feeling of, like, your mindset's improved, your body's improved, and as a result of it, your whole life's improved. Because it's very easy to change your body and not actually change your mind if you're not proactive about it. And you have to combine the two. And I think that one has definitely drawn a lot of criticism. People didn't like hearing that they should be able to deal with other things. They thought, it makes you a life coach, or it does these things. But I don't see it that way. And I see it that it's all intertwined, and I see it as one thing. I think that one has been one. I think around, like, what's been an interesting one actually is, more recently, it's like, if I randomly reach out to people that I've maybe not spoken to in a while, they'll be like, "Oh, Akash, I thought you're too big for your boots and you don't reach out to me anymore." And then I think, I'm the one that just reached out to you. But you could have always reached out to me all this time. Like, I've just like thought of you and just reached out. That's been an interesting one, and a new dynamic that I've not really experienced recently. And I'm learning that in all of this, really, is not to take anything personally, because if you don't take things personally, in most cases, it's just the people that are criticizing you, it's just a reflection of themselves, as opposed to who I am. And I don't let other people's criticisms define who I am, because I know who I am. And I know, if people say, "Oh, Akash is all about the money," or "Akash doesn't care about his people," or whatever the things I hear is, I know it's not true. And I know that, to me, that's the most important agreement that I have with myself, and that's the most important opinion, because I know it's not true. And if it did, then I'd be affected by it, but it's not. So yeah, whatever I hear through the grapevine, which always comes back to me, I always get, oh yeah, this person said this thing, or this person said that thing. I'm like, well, it's up to them. That's a reflection on them, not a reflection on me.
Yeah. And what's that quote? At first they'll like mock you, then they'll laugh at you, and then they'll ask you how you did it.
Yeah,
You know?
and in that they'll copy you as well. We've got plenty of copycats, you know. I don't need to say that.
No, I think that's is useful to everyone though, because I think there's a lot of people out there who want to do something, but having the courage to actually take the action to do it and put yourself out there, whether it is to start your own thing or in any kind of walk of life as well. I think there's definitely it does require courage just to make those first few steps, I think.
If you think about transformation for the general population person online 5 years ago, wasn't really a thing outside of, you know, the sort of very commercialized mainstream products that you see, but they're selling millions and millions of them and getting maybe 10 results out of it all. I didn't really see online general population transformation being mainstream, not mainstream, but being a thing. I didn't see it being a thing a couple of years ago. Now it's very different. I like to think RNT have had an important part of sort of shifting that culture, because it's now seen as a possible because I think it's not only from a coaching point of view, it's also the client. The client now sees more examples of it being possible, and they think, I can do this. And I think that's been an important culture shift that we've all had an important part to play in.
Yeah. Well, I remember years ago, I was also a coach, and that's how I got onto you guys initially, was just seeing the amazing results you were getting with regular people that didn't have the best genetics, you didn't have the optimal athlete lifestyle, you know what I mean? And you were doing all this online, and the testimonials or case studies were coming out all the time. And the integrity side of things, that's what attracted me to RNT the most, was giving the amount of free education you used to give was insane. You know what I mean? We still do, right? Like, it's one thing that's just been integral forever, and just giving out free, fantastic information right from the get-go without expecting anything in return.
Yeah.
And I'll always value that, even before I knew you guys as people. You know, I was just seeing how you were portraying your own self, and I was like, wow, this is a company that is very few companies like this within this industry at the moment, because everyone is just trying to sell you the next quick fix or charging you ridiculous amounts for nothing, etc., etc. And then here you are, like, myth busting, providing solid information, showing what can be possible with the right approach. And it was great to see.
There's a few things that I was very intentional with at the beginning, and one of them was very, very transparent in what we do with clients. You can go on. The reason I don't do it as much now with this specific example I'm going to give is because there's so many on the website that it would just be the same thing, sort of thing. But I was giving like step-by-step changes of how to make, like step-by-step, how do I get people, average person with poor genetics, into amazing shape, and exactly what to do, every single change, complete transparency. I don't think that had ever been done. And I got that inspiration from John Meadows, when he used to do the same thing for bodybuilders. And he used to show on his Mountain Dog website how he got bodybuilders step by step in the trenches, how he got them in shape. And I remember seeing that, thinking, I've never seen that done for the general population. Let me try that idea with them. And it went down as a hit. And I used to have so many people say to me, look, I've just followed X person's case study. I just followed the T, and I've got into this shape. And I'd be like, that's great. Like, well done. Like, this is really good work. And some people say that I've tried to do this thing, but I just couldn't do it. So I'm going to join RNT. And that's also great. Like, but my intention wasn't either of them. It was more just, look, this information needs to be out there, and people need to see what it really takes to get in shape for anyone, especially with people with bad genetics. And I think, I don't like using the bad genetic example, but I do think
I know what you mean.
South Asians do have the worst genetics of some of the worst genetics. And especially when I did it with those guys, it was like, oh, wow, this is different. Like, this has definitely not been done before. And it opened up a whole new sphere for both the general population and for the other coaches to be like, actually, we can't use that excuse anymore. Because I've worked in places where, like, oh yeah, the South Asians don't get any results. The black people don't count because they got Bayesian genetics, and the whites tend to, they get their results very quickly anyway. And those sorts of blanket statements, I was just like, well, I don't know if I agree with that. Like for me, it's so I wanted to show.
It's
I wanted
such
to
a
break.
horrible way to approach coaching in general.
Yeah. And it's just writing people off. It's like I used to hear like, oh yeah, vegetarians and vegans can't get in shape. So what did I want to do? I wanted to show step by step how to get vegans and vegetarians in shredded, like not just in shape, but totally shredded. And that was
I think women fall under that category a lot as well sometimes. You know, like a woman, you know, I've heard definitely banned around, you know, a female transformation's worth 3 male ones or whatever, you know, when people have categorized things. And
I just think a lot of that is, so I started telling the story of like step by step, how do we do it? And that was definitely different. And then once I gave enough examples of that, then I was like, okay, well, actually I want to show how is the physical, the vehicle, because that's the real big thing. It's like, okay, the real story is in the physical being the vehicle, and that's the power of what we're doing. And that's where I started talking less about sort of online personal training, more into body transformation, and then ultimately into transformation. And that evolved in itself through the years. So again, like I can't remember what you asked me, Ed, but
no, I think, well, maybe just if we've all forgotten where it actually started, I think just as a good note for any trainers listening, if you go through the website and you can literally go through the theory behind it all in terms of setting up diets, principles of training, and then you combine that with these case studies that literally give week by week breakdowns, you can put the principles into context to see how they work. And just by doing that, which is 100% free, you're probably going to have more knowledge around putting transformation into the real world than I would say 90 to 95% of trainers out there.
Yeah,
and that's
not
free.
even trainers. Yeah, even if you're a Gen Pop person, go in there. There's a bucket of education there for everyone to see and absorb.
There's something you know, the one person in the industry I've always admired is Dave Tate, the founder of Elite FCS, and one of his values is around education as well. They're massive on 100% free education, and he has a motto: live, learn, and pass on. And I remember I wrote an article for his website called Live, Learn, and Pass On, and I was basically explaining the value of like when you experience something and you live an experience and you learn from that experience. It's our duty as humans to pass it on to the next generation. And when I first came across this philosophy, I was like, this is exactly what we're doing here with the education, because the aim of it was never, oh, let's show off how knowledgeable we are, or let's try and get more clients. It was never that. It was actually, let's pass this on to the next generation of coaches, but also who needed it. Potentially people who needed it most were the actual general population. Let them see what's possible and let them experience it, let them put them into action. And that's what the real drive on why the education needed to be out there for, because it was sorely missing. Like it was sorely missing. And in the grand scheme of things, it still is sorely missing. It just needs to be spread to more people.
Yeah, for me, the education that's been put out to the masses, at least from my perception of social media, is all very like superficial, but just the same. You know, the amount of people are putting out memes and stuff about just energy balance being the most important thing and blah, blah, blah. Like everyone I think knows that like energy in, energy out, or like, you know, you need to move more, eat less. But I think what maybe I'm biased, but what R&T do so well is then implementing a bit more of the how into that.
Yeah.
Because I know even just things as simple as, I know you love this article, Ivan, the how heavy will you be when lean article, where it basically just gives you a good idea of what your body weight is likely going to be in relation to your height when you are actually lean. And that's something that, despite so many people being into fitness for years, you could be into fitness for 10 years, but you still might not actually have an accurate idea in your head of your actual body weight when you're lean. You know, like you could be walking around 80 kilos. I'll probably need to be like 78, 76 kilos. Reality is you might need to be like 65 kilos. And it's a hard one to take, but it's the truths that really help you open the door to actually putting these things into practice, rather than just like this. Not that the top level stuff isn't useful, but it's all just the same stuff getting churned out. It's not putting it into the actual reality of how you do it and what you're actually going to need to go through, what you're going to need to do.
Well, this is the thing, like if we look at the fitness industry across the board, one thing that's very common is there's very much a whole sort of short-term play here. And there's very few people in the industry are playing the long game. And by playing the long game, that means creating things like how heavy will you be when you're lean, creating really insightful blogs, podcasts, and things which will last the test of time. The reality is social media isn't, there's always going to be a new social media, isn't there? And you're creating on someone else's platform, and they call it like sharecropping. You're creating on someone else's thing. And, you know, I shared with you guys last week, a very well-known, very established online training company, an education company, that social media account got shut down overnight. And they had a nearly 100,000 followers and they got shut down overnight. And luckily, the company is smart in that it has a lot of other assets and it's not going to affect them. But if you take that to the masses of the industry, their approach is like, it's social media or nothing. And the problem with social media is, with the education, is you can only do tidbits. And I know we do it as well, but we have the back catalog of education where you can get lost in and learn. Social media should just, there's only so much you can teach on a little clip, right? Or in a little tidbit. And the reality is what we're doing with holistic transformation is you need to be able to go deep on it. And that's where I think what we've done very differently to other companies is we've built that, and that's hard work, because social media is you can just do it on your phone very quickly, but putting in hours and hours writing and recording and filming and all these things, it takes a long time and it's not easy. It looks like it. Oh yeah, they just wrapped up a couple of articles, but it's not easy. And that's the work that I love to see more people in the industry do, because that's the work I think that's going to be able to create the cultural shift and the educational shift that the mainstream need. And it's got to come from that, rather than just scrolling down where no one's actually intentionally learning. And I think more intentional learning needs to be, like, platforms of intentional learning needs to be created for the general population to be able to explore and take it in from, because it's impossible to learn all you need through social media. You need to be on a dedicated place to do so, and have the attention to give it. And I think that's where the industry is going to go, in that we need to more and more opportunities of learning platforms, of places of community where people can start creating small shifts in their community to then create a domino effect around them. It's going to require a lot of work. So that should filter out that will filter the wheat from the chaff.
100%. And I think that's a really good point with regards to just people are not in that mode to learn anywhere when they're scrolling through social media. It's just like, what's flashy, what looks cool. And that's all they're doing, just scrolling and scrolling. You're not actually taking in information. You're seeing tidbits, right? You're seeing clickbait. You're seeing things that are eye-catching, but you're not really learning anything. And you're completely right. That's pretty crazy. How do you know why the social media platform got shut down for that company?
I don't know. They don't even know why either, which is the crazy thing. And that's what when I saw that, I was like, oh wow, like, we should never like put all your eggs in one basket like that. And luckily they don't, and which I think is great. But for most, I'd say 99% of our industry, they put all their eggs in that one basket. It's a very risky game to play.
It'd actually be quite good if Instagram closed for 3 months, just to like close out all of the crap, and then
you separate the wheat
open back up again.
Yeah, I'm always inspired by seeing Carl Newport of Deep Work and how he operates. I mean, he's got that famous TED talk of why he doesn't use social media, but there's someone who's got an amazing body of work that speaks for itself, and that will last no matter what social media accounts the biggest trend right now, because he's got a body of work that you can't do overnight. You have to put in serious hours and hard work, and just can't replace that.
Yeah, he's a weapon.
That's why I like books as well. That's why I think books are always, when I see people release books, I think it's impressive, because it's not many people do it. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's so powerful and useful.
I've actually got a question for you regarding books.
Go on.
What are your thoughts on overall self-help books?
Yeah, good question. I think it's easy to, I think a lot of them say the same thing in multiple different ways. I think it's easy to get lost in self-help books without actually doing anything with it. Like you can read self-help and feel really inspired and motivated inside to want to change, but then something can happen in your life and you don't actually implement any of it. I think self-help books are only useful if you implement them. Otherwise, they're not. And I think you can also, and this is probably books, any nonfiction in general, is you could probably just pick like 3 to 5 books in each category and just absorb them and just live them, and you'll be fine, rather than reading endless self-help books and not actually getting anywhere. I think there's a lot of power in rereading books. And there's a few books I'll always read back on, whether it's in business or even in self-help or any other sort of context. But there's more value in that, I think, than in sort of constantly, especially with self-help. And I think just in the concepts of self-help, I think it's very linked to nonfiction in general. The nonfiction in general is that typically it's one message told in like multiple different ways. They could probably do it in 10 pages. They could probably do it in a long article in 10 pages, but because they've got an obligation to make it a book, they'll find loads of ways to do it. You don't get that with fiction because there's actually a story. But with nonfiction, I think, that's why I think things like Blinkist. Is it Blinkist? What's that app or software that basically does book summaries? Is it? I can't remember the name.
Could be
of it.
Blinkist. Yeah, maybe.
It basically tells you like the summary of the book, right? It's the Cliff Notes, right? And I think that's why they do well because in nonfiction, because you can just get the message very quickly. I think that's why when it comes to nonfiction, I'm starting to enjoy more I enjoy reading like biographies or like old texts, like really old texts, because they tend to be where most people, the modern, have just regurgitated from the old. So I think there's a lot of value in that. But yeah, otherwise, I think you can get a lot of the message just from. In business books, you can get the message just pretty much in like the title sometimes. Like you read the title, like, okay, well, that's what that book's about. That's pretty much it. I think there's very few books that continue to explore depth as you go along. Some do, but yeah. And on the self-help thing, I think it's just there's got, like we talk about all the time, you've got to pair introspection and action. Otherwise, nothing's really going to happen. That's why I love physical. That's what I love physical endeavors, because you have to by default combine introspection and action. This is why I talk about mindfulness is often missing the physical aspect, because you can be mindful but never actually put things to the test. Like, for example, you're being mindful and working on your mindset around food, but you don't have any non-negotiables or accountability around food. You're not actually going to prove whether your relationship with food is actually improving. You're just telling yourself these nice things, but then still emptying the donuts.
Yeah,
it's not actually doing it.
Being mindful as you stuff the donuts into your mouth.
Yeah. So whereas when you're actually controlling your body composition, you have to enact those things. And I think the physical is so all-encompassing, which is why it's so powerful.
Always.
That's why I got drawn to bodybuilding back in the day. I got drawn into bodybuilding purely because it's a 24/7 endeavor. I was like, because I remember thinking, this is like 2013, early 2014. I was like, I want something that's 24/7, all-consuming. Bodybuilding was like the clear answer to that. That's when I started shifting away from powerlifting and stuff.
So yeah, I was going to say, actually, in terms of like physical pursuits, you've competed in powerlifting as well as bodybuilding. What do you see the future looking like? Do you have any things you'd like to tick off the bucket list in terms of physical stuff?
I'm not too sure now. Like I've got shredded a few times. As in lines on my glutes a few times, which I think someone should always try and attempt in their life. I've done a few performance things, like I've competed in powerlifting as much as I could. I did a half marathon, which is, I think, that's the longest I'm going to go. I don't think I fancy going any longer than that, purely from an interest point of view. Though the other day I was thinking, like, what would it be like to run 100 miles? Like, what are those 100-mile races? I thought that'd be interesting. I was just thinking, what would go in your head running 100 miles? But I was like, I don't think I enjoy the preparation element of that.
My mate invited me to one of them in July.
Oh, really? 100-mile race?
It was a 100-mile. I don't know how competitive or like in terms of races, but 100-mile event. But I just thought, I don't think I could. It wouldn't be a high enough priority for me to commit to what was required to, do it in a good way. So I didn't. But I believe he's in training for it now, actually.
So, like, in terms of like competition stuff, I don't really have any anymore. Like I think I'll still, in my mind, I was always going to compete in bodybuilding again next year. But I want to see how this year goes with training and see if I've made sufficient improvements, which I think I have. But I did earmark that for my 30th next year was to do it again. Whether I will do it or not, I'm not sure. I think I'll probably get into ridiculous shape anyway. But whether I go on stage or not is another thing. But there's no other things I have in mind. There's no real sports that I want to pursue right now. Yeah, I don't have the gymnastic itch either. So for me being able to do a frog stand is enough for now.
Yeah, but the thing is, I think a good point there is that stopping you from training hard every day, every week?
I think that's what it is. Like I just love that feeling, and I just love that feeling of just going bananas, right? And that's why I was really happy with the fact that I managed to make some tangible progress during lockdown, which I think has put a lot of people being like to me, I can't wait to get to the gym so I can train hard again. But in my mind, I've been like, I can't wait to get to the gym, but not because I can train hard again, because I've already been training hard.
Yeah,
like it's more just because of the environment, and I like being in that separated environment rather than I can train hard now, because I've been training probably just as hard as always.
That's really interesting. That's really cool though. But I think that's really good for the listeners too. It's like you don't need a huge goal. You don't need to have some massive carrot dangling in front of you to keep your physical health up and keep your physical health going, because it just has so many other benefits that just are so intangible that we always speak about. So we won't bore everyone again with it.
Yeah. There's just something about it. I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it anymore. There's just something about like just training hard that it's just, it doesn't even need to be for that long. That's one thing I've learned in the last year, actually. I don't need to be training. I used to always think I need to train for like at least 50 to 60, 75 minutes. But in lockdown, I've probably been training about 35 to 40 minutes at most. And just really enjoying just like hitting a few sets really hard and just getting out.
Yeah, it's that feeling of knowing that you've got the voluntary power to exert yourself, right? And say what you do.
Yeah, just like once or twice in that session.
It's like a primal thing,
yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Just once or twice in that session. That's all you need to do, really.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
So yeah, in answer to your question, there's no there's no tangible things I want to tick off my list at the moment anyway. It could change, but right now, yeah. I'll get shredded again next year. And then the good thing is, like now I stay leaner year round compared to like when I've previously had to get really lean. I've had to drop like 20 kilos at a time. Whereas now I can just I probably just need to drop like 8, which is a nice feeling compared to 20, because 20 kilos is like 20 plus weeks, isn't it? Whereas 8 kilos, I can do it in like 12.
5.
Yeah, you're probably doing 6, I was going to say.
To be honest, like, yeah. Just go really hard and get out.
Yeah. Only got 8 kilos to drop. Easy. Just hit it.
You got this nice long plan mapped out. First day of the deficit, you just drop it.
What's the thing? Like for this year, I was thinking like, for the wedding, I want to be between 76 and 78. I was like, I'll start mid March. I'm going to start, and I'm thinking, well, I'm only 80 to 81 right now. Like this isn't going to take too long. So then I started it, and then I was like, a week in, I went from like mid 81s to low 80s. And now I'm like low 80s. I'm thinking I should probably stop. Like let me just hold it here. I don't need to go. I don't need to accelerate for no reason.
Break.
Yeah, dive break. Yeah. I don't need to accelerate.
Turn up at the wedding with skeleton face, like sucked in cheeks.
And all I did was literally just drop a little bit of my what I have after dinner. That was it. Just dropped a little bit of that, and it just started flying off.
Yeah, because it was food after 6 p.m. It's double the calories after 6 p.m. Why it came off. Yeah.
So so I'm just going to delay that whole diet.
So on the I guess wedding note is kind of a good segue on someone I wanted to ask you. I heard a quote recently from Stephen Hendry, who's like the really successful snooker player, who basically said that when he was really successful, he had to put his high performance in terms of his snooker ahead of everything else in his life, and it was ultimately the detriment of his social life. His marriage broke down, and he was quite open and honest in just saying like it's not a regret of his. He felt like it was a necessity. LinkedIn, I mean, obviously, I hope that's not the case for you, but I think, like, you know, moving forward, obviously, you're going to get married potentially in the future, like if you just start a family or anything like that. Do you think that you can be at the top of your game in all areas? And what's your thoughts around kind of balance and your thoughts in terms of high performance, not necessarily in terms of physical, but just in general?
Yeah, good question. I think we can only have, as high performers, you can only really have like 3 priorities in your life, and I think mine are quite clear. In that it's business, close family and friends, and my health. That's it. Like, I don't really do anything outside of that. But what I think is that you go through seasons where you rotate what the top one is, because you can only blast one thing really hard. And I think you rotate whatever season you're in. For example, like in the last 3 months, I would say I've been more in the relationships than in the other two. I've been giving more time to relationships. Doesn't mean I've been putting the others on a back burner, but I've just been elevating that up. However, I'd say I've only managed to kind of get a grasp of that in the last sort of 3 to 4 months. Before that, it was for the 3.5 years before that, I would say it's been pretty much business, and then let me try and keep other things just afloat. And that is, like, I've always trained, I've always looked after my health, but only recently I'm trying to take care of more of my mental health and my emotional health, and trying to keep some level of sanity as I do all this. But before that, I would say it was been like very much business at all costs. Like when I speak to people that have grown companies, they always say, like, they speak to other people and they're like, yeah, they climbed that mountain of business, but they left a carnage of wreck. You know, they just left a wreckage behind them in relationships, in their health and everything. They just tore everything apart, and that's always put me off. Because I've been like, I don't want to let that happen. And I've always been quite deliberate in continuing to see my friends and continuing to have a social life, continuing to be a good partner in my relationship, continue to see my family. Like I've tried to avoid not putting that on the back burner, because when I collapsed at the start of 2019, it's no coincidence that when I did it, my training was the worst it's ever been, my nutrition was the worst it's ever been, my steps were the worst they've ever been. But at the same time, I'd not even seen my friends for 3 months. I remember I was on a flight to Iceland with my fiance, now fiance. I remember saying to her, I can't remember the last time I saw XYZ. And she's like, why? Is that, I don't know. I just forgotten to book in time with them. And she's like, well, why don't you try and see one person a week? And I was like, okay, that's a good idea. And then since then, I've pretty much had this, I just pick one friend and I try and see them in a week, like one really close friend, and try and see one of them per week, even just for a walk, even if it's just for like something small. Because I realized then, I was like, I don't want to build something at the cost of my relationships. Because strangely, a lot of my close friends are actually all from school, and some of them are from preschool. None of them are actually quite new. They're all like, they've been really close. They've been the same like group of friends for so long. And I've always tried to be intentional with keeping that going. And likewise, until I moved in with my fiance, I used to always make time twice a week to have date night, as opposed to just thinking, it's just work. Not to say that like it's always a struggle. Like I'm not gonna lie. And until I'd say this year, my biggest fear around potentially kids was like, how am I gonna do it? It's always questioning myself, like, how am I actually gonna have kids if the way we're living like I am? And I think towards the end of 2020, early 2021, I think I started to think like something needs to change. I need to change this in order to, in the future, have kids. And only recently, my fiance said to me, like, for years, you used to always say, oh yeah, I'm a priority, or I'm in the top priority. And like, but I've always worried that kids would be difficult because I couldn't see you dedicating any time to them or to me. And she said, only now I can see that is a potential, and that is a possibility now, and it wouldn't be an issue. And that meant a lot when she did say it, because I think I finally clocked how to sort of balance the three. I think it's taken me quite a long time to get there, but I feel like now I'm in a position where I can devote energies to those 3 areas that are most important to me. So with regards to balance, like if you audit my time, it's definitely skewed to one way. And if you audit my head and my thinking, it's skewed 100% towards like one area. And I think if you want to really excel in an area, you have to be living and breathing it. I don't think it's possible to, for example, build a company or do something meaningful or excel at a skill without it consuming your thoughts most of the day. Like from pretty much from the minute I wake up, even if I'm doing other things, it's always there. I'm always thinking about something. And I remember reading in a book, I think it's called Legacy, and it's about the All Blacks. And they were talking about high performance, and they were saying like a lot of high performers feel guilty when they say, oh yeah, the family is not number one priority, or their relationships are number one priority, because that's the thing you're meant to say. You're meant to say your family's number one priority, and a lot of people get guilty of saying that, when the reality is for nearly all high performers, that's not their priority. Their priority is their pursuit. So my answer with that would be, my top priority is still in building something, but I've become better at tuning into how to manage health and relationships so neither of them suffer and they continue to thrive as well. And I think I've finally clocked how to keep those three going. If you were to add another thing into it, I wouldn't be able to do it. Like I wouldn't be able to, if I suddenly said to me, all right, I'm going to learn how to play snooker. Like it just wouldn't happen. Like there's no bandwidth left for it.
Yeah.
I think understanding that those three things I just need to worry about, it's helped a lot.
Yeah. So interesting. I think it's a great way to put it. But when you also think about it, that big goal that you're chasing is going to be something that's going to support your family later down the line as well. So there is that link, you know what I mean? There is that huge link to be like, yeah, I'm doing all this now, but it will give my family the resources to live a good life, to be comfortable, all those things that are probably also going to play into that.
Well, the interesting thing is I don't actually ever think about that sort of stuff, because I'm never like,
I know you probably don't. Yeah.
I'm never actually like, oh yeah, I'm doing this.
I'll justify it.
I'm doing this for the future of the family. Like I don't really. I actually think that's a big cop out that a lot of people make.
I was going to say, I think that's the way people justify it.
I think when I used to, because I know a lot of these like rich bankers and stuff, and they justify spending all their time in the office by saying, oh, I'm doing this for the kids, or I'm doing this because. But I'm like, dude, you never see the kids. Like,
You
never see the kids. You never see your family. How are you justifying this? When are you actually going to spend time with the kids? So I don't actually use that, because I don't. Firstly, I think that's a massive cop out, and I think Ed's probably thinking like you could easily fall into that trap of saying, "Oh yeah, I'm doing this for you, Ollie. Like I'm doing this for you, but I'm not going to see you until you're 10 years old." No, I understand your point. It's around the linking, right?
It's around the linking. I was thinking you're still linking that they are a huge priority. So you're still. I'm not saying.
No, I get it.
Provide for them. It's more like you have that in the back of your mind as like a high priority. To be with them.
I think also that what I realized, it's less the linking. It's more that I know the link I make is more that relationships and family and my friends make me feel good.
Yeah.
They make me feel like, it sounds cliche, but you make me feel filled. Like it's full. Like you feel. It adds an element that I don't get from work, if that makes sense. Like, and that's the same with health as well. I know we talk a lot about link your health to your business and these sorts of things, but for me, I definitely have that link, but at the same time, it's also a separate thing. It's like that makes me feel really good, and I don't think I could, if I missed one of those three things, something wouldn't feel right, and I think all of them would suffer. So there is that element to it as well. And I think the other thing around like, I'm doing this for the kids, I'm doing this for a future family, so everyone's comfortable. The good news is I set my life up to be very minimalistic. So my drive is never tangibly orientated or money orientated, because I don't actually need much to live, which is a really nice place to be. So I just do it for the love, and I do it for the bigger cause and the bigger reason for it. And that in itself has been very, very, very freeing. When I decided like I want to set my life up in this way where I have minimal overheads, and even if for children coming to the occasion, there's still minimal overheads in the grand scheme of things, like very, very minimal. That becomes very freeing and liberating to do that. And one thing I've always been conscious of is, if I make more money, I don't upgrade my lifestyle to go with it, and that can be very freeing. But that's a trap. It's very easy to fall into that trap of like, okay, I'm now gone from earning £20,000 a year to £30,000 a year. I'll upgrade my lifestyle to serve a £30,000 a year lifestyle. Now I'm going to 40,000. I'm going to upgrade it that way. And that's a very dangerous trap to fall into, because then now you have the pressure to just work to maintain a lifestyle. And that's when you I need to work to keep the kids in private school. I need to work to whatever it may be, you get my point here, right? It's to keep
Yeah,
a
yeah.
lifestyle, and when you have an expensive lifestyle, you can take the love out of it for your work. So I've tried to be intentional. I want to stay intentional. Luckily, my fiance is like is the same mindset, and she's not in that realm of like, oh yeah, we need to be here now. We need to live into this neighborhood.
Keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah, there's none of that. So that keeps us grounded, and I think that's really important for me to stay focused on my work in the way I want it to be, because I don't need to worry about I need to do this for that.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it, because then you can focus on the big picture, you can focus on the journey, you can focus on just doing good work.
If you think about retirement, I had this analogy the other day about retirement, and they were saying like there's a couple of easy ways to retire. One of them is just live below your means. Like if you just literally just live really, really minimalistically, you're pretty much retired, because you then just work for the love of working rather than to fulfill that paycheck that you need to hit. And that's a very liberating feeling. And I think it's helped me kind of find that balance, if you want to call it balance.
Yeah, I from my perspective, anyways, that balance doesn't mean if you've got those three things, it's 33% for each. It's finding the ratio that fits. I guess maybe we could link it into the macros that you like, the balance that works for you. It doesn't have to be equal across them all.
It's like when you think about health, there's like a few things I know I need to do to stay on my healthiest. One of them is sleep enough. That I'm not someone who can get a vibe on little sleep. I need that in order to do the other two. There's just nothing that functions without it. I need to sleep. I need to train hard at least 4 times a week. It's not all day long every day. And I need to move enough in the day, and I need to eat some good food. But these things are like, it's just a way of being now that makes me feel good and allows me to do the rest. And I'd definitely say if you took away any of them, that would be the one I would never take away. If that makes sense. Like that's still the foundation to the rest. Because if I didn't have that, then you almost think like, what would my life even be like? Like I wouldn't be able to do anything. So
yeah, it all starts from your physical health. It all starts from that. Like a real tangent, just real quickly. I was listening to this chat about Jordan Peterson, and obviously we know I personally really like Jordan Peterson. I think he's fantastic for what he's done. With all his knowledge and with all his all the books that he's written, all the mental stuff that he's done for his brain, like all the stuff that he's provided for society over the years, it's been incredible, right? But as soon as he got onto that benzo addiction, which ruined him for like 2-3 years, he couldn't do anything. You know what I mean? All that stuff that he was doing, giving value to society, this and that, it didn't help him when he was when he was unhealthy, when he couldn't look after his physical self. He couldn't actually function for like 2 years because his physical self wasn't up to scratch. And when you do look back in his career, when he really started to catapult with everything was when he actually cleaned up his diet and he stopped drinking. Those were the things that provided him the platform to really push on with all his intellectual endeavors. And as soon as he got sick, or as soon as his brain and his physical health deteriorated, he was off the radar for a good 2 years. He's just come back now, which is insane, right? Someone with that mental capacity and that intelligence to be flawed by ill health.
Yeah. I think, it's definitely the foundation, because if you just took away relationships and your work and you just focus on your health, I think you still feel pretty good. You just potentially might not have as much purpose in your day, but you'd feel really good. And I think you could just kind of go by. And then when you add those layers on top whilst maintaining it, you can just do these things at a much higher level.
Correct. Yeah.
I think though, from especially that answer on the balance, it's quite clear you're quite deliberate with your life, what you spend your time on, how you do things. But at the beginning, when you were talking about, especially your past, you referred to luck quite a bit. How much do you think luck really plays a part, as opposed to how deliberate you are in your actions actually determining how lucky or successful you are?
I think, in all honesty, I think there's a lot to deliberation, and I think I've always been quite intentional with the way I live. I used to piss a lot of people off in the family when I used to not turn up to events, or when I used to not eat at their events, or when I used to just want to go home instead. this is like when I was younger, but I think back and I'm like, why was I like that? And it was just because I just didn't want to be around that. And I just wanted to be very intentional with who I spent my time with. And even now I'm very like specific with, when people are like, oh yeah, should we just meet for a coffee? I'm like, we could just have it. Just voice note me because these sorts of things. It's not like I'm being rude. I just think like I just want to be very intentional with it because energy is so scarce and time is so scarce. But even energy, like I'm trying to learn how to balance your energy, and it's one of those things you can't quantify that, but you have when you start to understand how your energy operates, you can start understanding how to allocate it accordingly. So I think I've always tried to be intentional with it, and yeah, it can annoy other people sometimes, but for me, that's always the way I wanted it to be. And the thing around luck is, I think luck only arrives when you just work your bollocks off for a long period of time, and you might just happen to stumble upon some. I think there's definitely elements of like luck where you just stumble upon something that just comes randomly. I don't think I've really had that. I think that does happen, but I don't think I've had that. I think I've had to definitely work for those opportunities. So when I'm using those words lucky, I'm probably just being
humble.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Well, you've created the opportunity through hard work, right? And then the luck just appears, right?
Yeah, there's some saying, isn't it? Like the harder you work, the luckier you get, or something like that.
Yeah. But I think with the whole thing around hard work is I think like there's I think it's important to know what to work hard on.
Yes.
Like it's very easy to just work hard and hard. And I would say like if you want to circle back to the beginning where you asked about my regret, I would say sometimes I've worked hard on a lot of things which are not important, and I'm trying to be more intentional. What I'm actually going to spend my time working hard on, and I think I didn't. As an example, like I took a long time to delegate and hire people in RNT who were not who were sort of quote unquote behind the scenes, because I just thought I could just do it. Like I'll just do it quicker than everyone else. But the reality is I was working hard on things which I shouldn't be working hard on, and there are probably people who can do better than me. And I think finding what to work hard on, which is what I'm trying to work. We're trying to work on that right now, and I'm trying to work with you guys. Like, what should you guys be working hard on? Because you could easily work hard. Like neither of you two have problems working hard. But it's like, what should we work hard on? What should we not work hard on? And that's that I find really difficult, because everything looks like something worth working hard on. But what's actually going to create some tangible return is another thing. You can work a lot of hours and actually do nothing, which I've definitely gone through periods of, which is quite upsetting when you think about it, right? It's like, it's just a waste of time. That is a waste of time, isn't it? But at the same time, nothing is truly a waste of time, because it's somehow going to help you in the future. It somehow may form as a learning. But when we really break it down, a lot of what we do is quote unquote a waste of time, because it hasn't actually produced something. But I think it also falls into the whole trial and error element of finding what you should be working on. It's a learning. Yeah.
You learn from that. Yeah.
You learn what you should focus on.
Yeah, it's like, that was a waste of time. I'm not going to do that again.
Learning what to focus on is really hard. It's like, it's finding what are you really good at? What are you, where do you add the most value? And that's an interesting self-exploration to go through. Once you clock that, then you go all in, right?
Yeah, it's hard and smart work, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's working smart. That was in response to the luck question, right?
Yeah. You answered it. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Damn.
Anything else you got for me?
I think you've
quick fire.
Yeah, go on.
What's your favorite book of all time? One title.
You're going to cut this little bit out, so it is quick fire. Or... quick fire.
I'll give you the most impactful one. The most impactful one I find is non-fiction was Man's Search for Meaning. and fiction was probably Fight Club.
Ah,
Yeah,
nice.
and the reason why.
You seen the movie?
Yeah. Actually, I read the book before the movie as well. I didn't actually
Ah.
realize at the time that they were linked, weirdly. Right? But the reason I read it, it was the reason it was really impactful. It's because it changed the way I write. I started writing. Up till then, I was very academic in my writing. I was very because I did a science-based degree. It was very like like research reports. It was like long paragraphs. It was very dry and very like just very academic. And I read that and I thought, wow, this is really good writing. It's very quick pace, very punchy. And I thought, let me start writing like that. And I just that's what allowed me to find my voice afterwards and my own writing style. So I always remember that book for that reason more than anything. That's probably why it's always one of my favorite books. And funny enough, I read them both on the same holiday in 2016.
Nice. That's all I got.
Oh, awesome. Well, thanks for that. I thought it was an interesting discussion. Thank you for facilitating.
Brilliant.